Uh, this session is divided into two parts, Part A and Part B. Part A will focus on the ferrous side and Part B on the stainless steel side. Now let me introduce you to Amir Syed. Amir is a reporter from Fast Markets covering the South Asian steel and non-ferrous scrap markets since October 2023. He specializes in reporting on steel scrap for India, Pakistan and Bangladesh, as well as the aluminum scrap market for India. He holds an MBA with dual specialization in marketing and human resource. Amir, please, the stage is yours.
Thank you for the introduction. A very good morning to everyone. I would like to thank MRAI for the opportunity to be a part of this discussion. And it is indeed a pleasure and honor to be here as a moderator on this session on navigating supply and demand, the Asia steel and scrap market outlook. In today's session, we'll look at how the steel and scrap markets in Asia are evolving, especially with changes in demand, prices, trade flows, and supply pressures. We'll begin with two short presentations, one from Platts and one from myself, and then we'll move on into the panel discussion with our key market leaders. So without any further delay, I would like to invite our speakers to the stage. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Sanjay Mehta, President, MRAI and Chairman, FTC Group. Mr. Zain Nathani, Managing Director, Nathani Group, and Vice President, MRAI. Mr. Keyur Shah, Managing Director, Mono Steel, and Director at MRAI. And Mr. Shravan Agarwal, Director, Guardian Castings, and Director at MRAI. May I now request Jia Hui from Platts to deliver a presentation. She'll give us a quick overview of current steel and scrap market trends across Asia. Over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining this session today. And today I'll be talking a bit about navigating volatility in Asia's steel and scrap markets, as well as exploring key trends and developments that we are seeing in these dynamic markets. For today, the agenda will mainly cover three fronts. The first being the Asian steel markets in a shifting global trade environment, followed by developments in Chinese steel exports and industrial policy, and lastly, in looking at how the billet influx is currently weighing and pressurizing ferrous scrap prices. Right now in this year, we can see that on a macro front and on a macro lens, we are seeing a very tumultuous sort of year ahead where we've seen many different tariffs being implemented, many evolving trade policies being enacted, and also a lot of unclarity surfacing in the markets as market participants look for more clarity on the sidelines. So we've seen that very recently, US President Donald Trump has actually announced the latest adjusted reciprocal tariffs from August 7, which range between 10 to 41% for different international countries. And we've also seen that prior to that announcement, he also announced the doubling of steel as well as aluminum tariffs from 25% to a 50% all-in blanket sort of tariff. And we've seen that later, that news was also expanded to cover household products, including things like refrigerators, washers, machines, which also led to a lot of repercussions in the market. Such ever-changing changes, as well as further developments, have also caused Asian markets to respond in kind. So we've seen that a lot of these uncertainties have carried over and reverberated in the Asian steel markets. So we've seen different developments of tariffs and trade barriers alike. For example, in Vietnam, we've seen that they've recently imposed AD duties on Chinese HRC. And in South Korea, we've seen similarly that they are levying provisional duties on hot-rolled steel products from both China as well as Japan imports. We've also seen India, of course, has also recently announced a temporary safeguard duty, which is likely to last for 200 days. And it's a safeguard duty applicable on imports from China and Vietnam. So we can see that actually, amidst all of these uncertainties, how are the markets responding? On the left-hand side, what you'll be able to see in the graph is that we are seeing a very interesting phenomenon where HRC import prices into Vietnam have actually started diverging from Chinese export prices. On the left-hand side, you will see that while in the start, you can see a lot of the two lines actually closely mirror each other's trajectories. Now we are actually seeing a decoupling of those price assessments. And the reason for that is because given the recent uncertainties, a lot of the Vietnamese re-rollers have actually looked towards attaining different origin materials, including from Malaysia, from Japan, as well as from Indonesia. So we can see that sort of interesting transition where the markets are starting to diverge. And if we look to the right-hand side of the slide, we can see that similarly in the Chinese HRC market, amidst the increasing supply as well as added pressure, we're seeing that Chinese HRC export prices are actually now lagging behind domestic prices amidst this increase in weight on sentiment. So we have seen that the domestic prices right now are actually doing better, and we are also seeing a further price spread in the negative region right now, especially in Q2. So a lot of these have seen the slow offtakes in HRC have also contributed to an increasing interest in offers for slab as well. So now we can see that a lot of attention has been played in recent times on the Chinese steel exports. The main reason for that is because China is able to sort of offer at a very competitive and compelling price. And because of that, we're seeing that China's June steel exports have actually maintained strong growth, with it increasing actually year on year if we look at the first half of January to June 2025 figures. While the final level for excuse me, for the 2025 annual levels have not been determined yet, we are hearing from market participants that they believe that it might actually be seen to decline, with the primary reason being because a lot of people have anticipated the increasing in Chinese tariffs being levied onto Chinese imports. So they have actually brought forward their demand from H2 into H1 to try to sort of circumvent that position. So in that case, many people are expecting that given that the demand has been brought forward, a lot of the sort of bearish sentiment around China's construction steel markets as well as property and infrastructural markets remains weak in general. So because of that, it's likely to continue to dampen sentiment. We are seeing again, steel production has actually declined in June, but nevertheless, oversupply actually remains a pressing concern because the current supply availability far outpaces the demand trends and trajectory. So we are seeing that for downtrends in China property sector, you can see that there has been that declining sort of overarching trend, but really we've also noticed that the floor sales of new home starts in China have actually continued to decline, and this is similarly mirrored in the infrastructure investment sector as well. So we've noted that in the Chinese property sector, a lot of the sort of market participants have mentioned that it is quite hard to see any further sort of bolstering of prices as well as support. And we are seeing in the infrastructural side, many have mentioned that the current fiscal stimulus is not sufficient enough to actually fully bolster steel prices. And they've also noted that some of the current sort of local government special bonds have been allocated in a smaller proportion comparatively for the infrastructural investments. And therefore, it's become hard for market participants to see much support rising from those factors. So we can see again that what has been the cause, and we've explored the cause of all of these increasing export levels, but what are the market sort of impacts rising from that? So we've seen that rising Chinese billet export volumes have actually continued to put a pressure onto ex-seaborne prices. So more inflows of more competitive Chinese billets are actually compelling regional markets to go down in response as well. And interestingly, I would like to share a statistic where in the first 5 months of this year, we've actually seen that the total Chinese steel exports of billet has actually already surpassed the total annual export volumes of Chinese billets in the whole year of 2023. So such an increase in surplus of trade flows have actually caught and garnered the attention of the Chinese authorities as well. So we've heard that from some of the authorities that there has been propositions made to actually try to constrain their billet exports in hoping to look more towards their value-added products instead. So despite that, however, we are aware that a lot of the market participants have mentioned that such a proposition would prove unfeasible and unviable as well, considering that right now the steel industry is a significant contributor of both GDP as well as the labor employment. So that would be very difficult for China to maintain if they were to actually face such rigid constraints. So currently, we are actually seeing that the China steel emission, in that case, given all of these different factors, it's currently at a crossroads because less efficient mills are facing an exit over capacity, emission, as well as demand challenges. As you can see from the slide, towards the very end, it's looking at a projection where commissions for Chinese materials are actually planned to be commissioned over 2025 to 2026. And we can see that 124 million per metric ton per year of pig iron, as well as 182 million per metric ton of crude steel is expected to be planned to be commissioned across these 2 years. But unfortunately, you can also see that just next to it in the January to early June 2025, the actual commissions that have come online are actually very far removed from that goal. Are very far removed from that goal. And you can see that there is still a very wide sort of barrier that needs to, a very wide chasm that needs to be encompassed. And you can also, but importantly, I think, what is significant is that even with current levels, it remains an oversupply, and right now they have ample production levels, which have actually proved to be challenging and caused different production cuts to actually emerge as well in the market. So we've seen recently that China has actually announced for different production cuts in steel mills in different Chinese regions, including Tangshan, Anshan, and more, in looking to actually reduce the emissions ahead of the National Day military parade. And so because of that, they've actually made these sort of arrangements to help curb productions, as well as potentially to also stem a bit of outputs. So we've noted that right now, I think that China's, one of its core tasks that the China Iron and Steel Association has mentioned is that it actually seeks to reduce the iron and steel production capacity for this year. And increasingly, we've also heard from CISA representatives that they are actually looking to exit low efficiency steel mills, especially considering current fundamentals, including rising emissions as well as decarbonization costs. So some of the CISA representatives have also mentioned that a possible way in which this could be ensured would be to actually make sure that the actual existing capacities are dismantled before fully reinstating new ones to come online. So however, I think that it is ultimately up to the different sort of governments in which they are able to determine the carrying out of the capacity swap mechanism in China. So right now, that still remains to be a question that is answered. Lastly, in talking about how the Chinese billets, and then in the Ferrous side of things as well, in looking at the raw material side, I think there has been a lot of changes in the raw materials prices across the past few weeks as well. And we can see that the influx of actually Russian as well as competitively priced Chinese billets have also helped to weigh on scrap prices. So we are seeing in Taiwan, especially right now, given that Taiwan is in a summer electricity phase, we are seeing rising electricity costs actually contributing to lowering demand for ferrous scrap as well, given that many of the steel makers are looking to procure billet at a more favorable rates. We are also seeing in different parts of India, for example, where even though right now it's the monsoon season, so there has been a slight dampening in demand for ferrous scrap, but we are expecting that demand will likely increase significantly and substantially, considering that India right now is the second largest ferrous scrap importer in the world. It's actually likely to improve given the increasing infrastructural investments, as well as increasing projects planned, as well as greater demand for green steel coming on board as well in the next few years. So I think that we've also heard in Vietnam recently that a similar sort of situation is ensuing. Right now, many people are looking out for this Friday's counter tender for the H2 grade ferrous scrap bulk cargoes, but we are also hearing that in Vietnam, demand has remained rather moderate. The government disbursement investment has actually gotten better, and many are anticipating that in the second half of this year, there would be increased imports coming into place, primarily driven driven by a few factors, including the end of the monsoon season, including the fact of budgeting so that they would be able to ensure further financing for the next year, and also because of the onboarding in which the government in Vietnam has actually brought into question and brought into plans long-term strategies for investment as well, with a lot of construction projects, including the airports, the railways, and etc. I note that I'm almost towards the end of the presentation, so I think that looking forward, what we are seeing in ferrous scrap is that it's a very developing sort of situation. We are seeing that scrap in itself has always remained a sort of limited availability. So it's always been constrained by that sort of availability of inputs, and we are seeing different sort of market players, whether in Australia and Southeast Asia, all grappling with that same question as to how we might be able to get the necessary input in creating further steel production for the future. So we've seen some people have been looking towards DRI, HBI alternatives as well, and then we've also seen different sort of mechanisms put into place to address that. But looking forward, we anticipate growing demand in both Vietnam as well as Bangladesh and India. And I think that many people are still going to keep a close lookout for how that might develop in the near future. So that's it on my end, and thanks very much for everyone's attention. I would like to call upon Mr. Syed to continue the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zia. I'll now take a few minutes for my presentation, what we are seeing at fast markets on steel and scrap market in 2025, especially from India and South Asia. So this is the antitrust policy we have here at fast markets. Okay, so now let's look at some of the key challenges that the market is facing in 2025. One of the key issues which Gio also explained is the surge in Chinese steel exports. The main reason attributed to this surge in exports is basically bearish local demand, and as a result, producers are aggressively shifting to exports now, and this is also putting pressure on scrap demand as well. Another key challenge which the industry is facing is reduced scrap collections in developed economies, primarily on the back of sluggish local markets, especially in Europe, currency volatility, and tight recycling laws. And finally, we are seeing export restrictions and tariff uncertainties, which is mounting on global scrap trade flows. Let's look at the bigger picture. The global crude steel production dropped 2.2% year on year to around 934 million tons in the first half of 2025, according to World Steel Association. The contraction was driven largely on the back of fall in crude steel productions in Asia, except India, Europe, Middle East, and Americas. In contrast, India emerged as a clear outlier with 9.2% year-on-year uptick in crude steel production, totaling to around 82 million tons during the period. I think Jia, she has explained it very well, but the only concern is we differ that fast market analysts, they anticipate Chinese exports of semis in 2025 to surge to around 11.1 million ton. This is the major headwinds Indian mills are facing. One of the biggest dent is availability of low price DRI in the Indian market, which is actually denting the intake of imported scrap. So far this year, the average premium of shredded scrap stood at around $63 per ton, which is almost $8 per ton higher than the 10-year average from 2015 to 2025. That might sound significantly good, but not for the scrap market. A higher premium means shredded scrap costs more than DRI, making it less attractive, especially for the price-sensitive secondary steel market. One of the key challenges in global trade flow is rising scrap restriction across the globe. Mr. Dhaval Shah has already highlighted this during the opening session, so I am not going too deep into this slide. And lastly, Europe is inching towards implementing WSR effective May 2027. Decision on non-OECD countries that will qualify receiving waste materials under the new WSR will be declared in November 2026. So let's hope things go smooth in this front. That concludes my presentation. Now let's move into the panel discussion. My first question to Mr. Sanjay Mehta, I would like to begin with, as this session title suggests, navigating supply and demand. Speaking of which, availability of cheaper DRI is actually denting the demand for scrap in India, as we are already seeing a shift in the preference from less scrap to more DRI in steel production. What is your take on this, sir? And what is your outlook for this particular DRI versus scrap thing?
Thank you, Amir. The presentations have already shown the slide that there is a difference between shredded and DRI. Prices are about $60 per ton. And it is true that because of the lack of demand and the production cost has not gone down, production cost has gone up, interest rates have gone up, everything has gone up. So people need to balance their mixture in the furnace. And so because we are very much rich in the sponge iron and iron ore here, and our DRI sponge production is going up. So definitely, and it's cost effective also. So people are mixing very well. People are using more DRI instead of scrap. Scrap arising has gone up also in India, but looking into the production of steel has gone up by almost 8 to 10%. We are using more DRI, and times to come we will use more DRI also, because the productions have gone up drastically, and it will go up again. So I feel that we are going to be less dependent on international market. We will depend, but less dependent, especially on the steel scrap side. That scrap imports might be around 6-7 million tons, depends upon the time to time. But yes, because of the markets are sluggish, markets are down, so we are using more DRI, more sponge. Availability is good, the production is good, so that we are able to match the production level. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Nathani, as a key supplier of scrap into both India and Bangladesh, what is your view on this shift? Are buyers reducing reliance on imported scrap in favor of cheaper DRI and HBI, or is it still a pricing game according to you?
Thank you, Amir. As Sanjay Bhai has also covered, I think the markets currently favor more usage of DRI and HBI within India. You have two of the largest secondary steel mills on the panel with me, and they can give you a little more analysis, but I think it's a pure pricing game. I remember being on a similar panel 2 years back with Mr. Keyur Shah, and somebody asked us this question, and that time India imported around 10 million tons of ferrous scrap that year, and we were all projecting that India would import 12 or 15 million tons of ferrous scrap the following year. So dynamics change, pricings change, markets change. Indian mills have the flexibility and the cushion to easily switch across these raw materials as depends on how the economics work. Right now sponge iron prices have been depressed in India for quite a while. If that suddenly changes again, you might find scrap being competitive in the very short term. So it's just a pure pricing game, but I'll let the two steel mills on the panel give you a little more insight on that.
Mr. Agarwal, from buyer's point of view, what is your take on this? And how, I have also a follow-up question to you. How difficult is it to compete with global sentiment, even the given challenges? How difficult is it to compete with the global sentiment, meaning, the bellwether Turkey market, if the prices go up or down? So how difficult is that for you as a buyer to compete the global sentiment with the local sentiment, which we are seeing, the availability of cheaper DRI and HBI?
See, the production of DRI in India is rising about 8 to 9% over a year. And Indian mills the mills who are not compared, for a mill like me, we were typically melting scrap all this time. About 90% was scrap and 10% was DRI about a few years back. But over the years, our consumption, we have come out of our comfort zone and increased our consumption of DRI. Today, I think last year we averaged about 25% of DRI and 75% of scrap. Last month, when India was out of the international market due to lower prices and we couldn't buy much of scrap, we used sponge up to 45-50%. So there's a huge shift. And over the years, the yield and the quality of Indian sponge iron has improved, chemistry-wise and recovery-wise also. So I think going forward, our inclination is going to be towards DRI for some years until we have enough scrap generation in India.
Indeed, we are seeing, sponge iron usage is scaling up in India. Mr. Shah, are buyers now taking more short-term decision in procuring scrap based on DRI prices, or the global sentiment, especially the bearish sides, plays the role, as in when the market goes down? Is it like, scrap gets more attractive according to you as a buyer?
Thank you, Amir. Basically, India being an emerging player actively in the market, they've got three different sources of material rather than scrap. First is DRI, second is HBI, and third is pig iron. All this material gets imported in India. The main thing is the prices. As of now, it's $55 to $60 gap as compared to scrap. Also, the DRI and HBI, they have got very good material yield as compared to scrap, which is more viable to the players in the market to produce steel, right? So, looking at the current scenario, India would be in market with more productions of DRI and more of material imported by HBI and pig iron for the consumption of steel. Thank you.
I agree. And I add-on question, although India is a pioneer in producing DRI, how is the influx of cheaper DRI, especially from Middle East, cheaper HBI from Middle East, is impacting the local sentiment of DRI and in turn impacting the imported scrap sentiment?
Basically, India is also exporting DRI, coming up at the prices. India is exporting the DRI at prices compared to the import prices. You get a benefit of $15 to $20, right? So it's both ways win-win situation for the buyers and also for the sellers. Whichever way they get the opportunity, they perform.
Right. So I have a question to Mr. Agrawal and Mr. Mehta. I'll go with Mr. Agrawal first. I understand that there is a tussle between scrap sellers and buyers when it comes to bookings. Seller oftenly suggests Indian buyers to raise their bids, whereas buyers uses sponge iron finished steel prices for calculating scrap cost. So what, according to you, would be the most efficient way to scale up scrap intake for meeting decarbonization goals? Does Indian market require a tailored pricing dynamics when it comes to consistent intake of scrap?
See, the tussle between the buyer and seller with regards to the scrap is going to go on forever. But now, yes, we take sponge iron pricing as a base when procuring, because now we are more comfortable using sponge iron because there's no currency risk, it is easily available, and it also moves in tandem with the Indian market. If the Indian prices of our finished products are going up or down, sponge is moving with it. But the international pricing is different. International prices moves according to the overseas markets. And I think to better it, we need some support. People have to realize that they have to provide some premium from green steel. Only then we can increase our intake of scrap, and our reliance on the sponge can go down. Until then, I think price is the king.
Mr. Mehta, do you agree with this?
100%. That, yes, as on today, there is no charm of reducing carbon, producing green steel, and doing that, any steel makers will not able to make money. So adjust the cost and everything, they have to use more DRI sponge and adjust the balance. So unless government does not come out with the policy, does not get premiums for producing better materials, they are producing BIS grade material, and we are absolutely compliant steel producers, but we are not getting better premium for producing better material, more better material that consume more low carbon steel. So to produce low carbon steel, we need to get better premium of the material from the government or from the buyers in India. That journey is slow, but we will reach that goal after a few years. It's still, that time has not come in India.
That was my next question, but since you have already answered to that question, I think there is no policy as such implemented by the government to encourage green steel in terms of paying incentives like we see in the Western countries. So yeah, so I would like to shift a bit towards the trade flows. How does the influx of Russian, because lately I think it was a couple of years back when India was consistently importing pig iron from Russia. So it's quite similar to the question which I have asked to you about Middle East. So is Russia still a concern for the Indian buyers?
Please, so the
Russian HBI pig iron they were exporting to India. So is it still a concern for you as a buyer?
No, basically it's not a concern for us. It is now a raw material which we are getting at cheaper prices, imported in India to make the steel. And there's no issue for importing the material from these countries. Also, the quality of the material is superior. And while using in the furnaces, basically there was a thumb rule before, like you need to have 90% scrap, as Sharanbhai told, 10% DRI was the old thumb rule. Now, actually, people have shifted to DRI and HBI, where the intake of scrap is maximum 25%, or you can say 27% as of now.
Right. Mr. Mehta, as a price reporter myself, I am seeing this issue from quite some time, that although Indian imports have risen year on year, but as someone tracking the market closely, I have noticed that apart from some specialty alloy makers and stainless steel makers, most Indian buyers prefer booking scrap or raw materials on water or arrival cargoes. So my question is, do you see Indian buyers moving towards forward bookings anytime soon, or is it volatility, financing pressure, or perhaps lack of confidence holding that shift back?
Yes, very true. That large buyers will book the material in advance, that also in very less quantity, but definitely small buyers are going away from the more commitments, longer commitments in the market because of the pressure of the dollar prices versus Indian rupee prices. That is also giving them very shocking news, because in the last 2 months, if you see, more than 1.5 rupees has gone up per dollar. So that is also very loss making for them. And more, I mean to say, the market is volatile, the market is not fixed, prices are not that much lucrative that people are afraid of getting material. So DRI is available, sponge is available, local scrap is available. People don't want to commit more longer commitments. So they are getting raw material on the water, and they're preferring to buy that kind of material. I think so market will go like that only in the times to come. And till the prices are not attractive, till the productions are going up, I don't think so prices, people will book more material in advance and more commitment, will give more commitment for the scrap cargoes. It's easily available nowadays.
I mean, perhaps to counter risk, is hedging, according to you, is hedging would be an option to overcome or to shorten the risk when it comes to scrap booking?
Sorry, hedging?
Hedging.
No, I don't think so.
That won't work in India?
No. I have not heard that people are doing hedging and people are afraid of that kind of differences. That is not, I don't think so. People are doing any kind of hedging in scrap. And it's okay. I'm very much confident that people are having comfort, people are in comfort zone on the imports of scrap. They are definitely getting enough material. Local material also is good available. Sponge, DRI, very, comfort feeling is there. So I'm not very much, I haven't heard that people are hedging a kind of scrap versus steel or anything.
Might be shifting to neighboring, sorry.
I don't know. I don't think Indians like to hedge. Yeah. So I have not heard of any hedging someone must be doing, but lately there was some hedging for finished long products which the real estate players were using when the prices went up. But as such, I think...
Right. Moving on to the neighboring Pakistan, again, I'll bring in Mr. Mehta. Recently, we saw Pakistan and Indian shredded prices holding close with just a $5 difference, but now that gap has widened sharply to $20 to $25, even though no major shipping surcharge or freight spike has been implemented. So, I mean, like, why do you see there is such difference of like $20, $25 when it comes to shredded pricing in Pakistan and India?
Options are not there for them. We have options. We have a good arising. We have a DRI, sponge. All the options are available. They don't have options, and they are predominantly they are using more shredded scrap. And definitely, yes, HMS was a duty. Now that's a free, but they are buying good quality of scrap. And I have seen that they are always buyer of good material, but in limited quantity. Not like we like our kind of appetite. We are buying more quantity, more imports and everything. And they are having limited buyers. They don't have any options, so they have to buy material at premium price. And Pakistan always have a $5 up than the India. So there is a definitely difference in the shredded price as on today for India and Pakistan and HMS difference prices. But I think so market is like that only. And we have a lot of choices. They don't have that kind of choice available. That is the only way out.
Mr. Agrawal, since Mr. Mehta has already said, Pakistan has eliminated duties on HMS 8020 now. So do you see that anytime soon, apart from shredded, HMS would also be competed between India and Pakistan, seeing Pakistan was already importing HMS from Middle East, and now I have heard a lot of material from UK and Europe is also being offered to Pakistan.
Yeah, certainly there's a huge shift. Middle East was almost most of the material from the Middle East was earlier flowing to India. But now in the recent months after their duty change, suddenly all the material from the Middle East is going to Pakistan. And so is the same thing happening with the US and UK material. The disadvantage to India for that is now we have to book material with longer transit because Pakistan is paying a higher price for the Middle Eastern material. So that shift has happened.
Right. So now let me rope in bulk scrap and sourcing strategy for that. Both India and Bangladesh have historically depended heavily on the US West Coast for deep sea cargoes, but now we are seeing something interesting. Bangladesh has also started diversifying, sourcing deep sea cargoes not just from the US, but increasingly from Japan, Singapore, and even Australia and New Zealand. Why is not India exploring these alternate routes more actively? Mr. Zain Nathani, is it logistical complexity, lack of long-term relationship, or is it the domestic DRI cushion just making buyers less aggressive in securing diversified sources?
Yeah, I mean, good question, Amir. Honestly, Bangladesh doesn't have much of an option. They don't have the alternate routes of, domestic DRI, HBI. They've always been a completely 100% scrap-driven market. And because of that, they have to find new sources of scrap. They can't just be fully dependent on one market like the US West Coast. So they've started diversifying. They're buying more from Japan. Vietnam's not being much from Japan. So Bangladesh over the last 1 year has bought a lot more from Japan. You're right, they're buying from Singapore as well. We even heard of a cargo recently from Malaysia being sold into Bangladesh. But having said that, Indian East Coast buyers have also recently bought cargoes from Japan. I do think it's the latter in your question where you said it's DRI cushion just making Indian buyers less aggressive. We've discussed that in detail. I think Indian mills have various diversified sources available, various options available to them, and it's purely a pricing game. If Japanese cargoes are available cheaply, they will buy Japanese cargoes. If local DRI is available at a better price, they'll happily switch over to that. So I think it's more of a pricing matter.
Mr. Shah, what is your view on this thing?
Actually, now the Japan cargo coming up to India also, main reason is the times. As the cargo coming up from West Coast, USA, it takes about 45 to 50 days to reach India. Whereas just Japan material comes within 20 days, 25 days at Indian port. And again now, before if you used to see the vessels from Japan were about 10,000 tons, 15,000 tons, small vessels. Now the vessel capacity has changed to 25,000 tons, which saves a good freight for the buyers. So actually, the prices of the scrap from Japan is as compared to the US market, it's about $10-15 cheaper. So buyer gets a good attractive price for the procurement of the material.
Right. And just to add on, how significant is the Bangladeshi deep sea market in shaping India's bulk scrap purchasing behavior? Meaning, how significant is Bangladeshi deep sea market prices relevant to the Indian deep sea scrap procurement?
It basically depends on, as India being an opportunist buyer. So we look at the prices where we get the opportunity. If we find the prices very good, then maybe Bangladesh would also be, for some time, not available for the procurement, and India would be buying the material. But as of now, Bangladesh is in the market for the procurements, and India is at the back foot. Rather than having more of scrap, India has shifted to HBI, DRI, and pig iron.
Just sticking to Bangladesh for a moment, Mr. Nathani, we are seeing noticeable slowdown in infrastructure demand and government spending, especially after the political chaos happened last year. From your reading, what is the near-term outlook for Bangladesh steel and scrap market?
Look, I think if you visit Bangladesh today, or you talk to any of the large steel mill buyers of bulk scrap cargoes today, they all feel the most challenging part or the period is behind them. They're all very optimistic about how things are in the short and medium term. BSRM, which is the largest steel mill in Bangladesh, publicly listed company, they've actually continuing with their expansion plans. So when a steel mill is actually, even in times of uncertainty, are not putting their expansion plans on hold, I think that's, very strong belief in their local market and their local economy. So you have to take that into consideration as well. Of course, no one can predict what the elections, which are supposed to be end of this year or early next year, can throw up some more short-term challenges. But overall, if you talk to the steel mill owners and the large mills out there, they're all continuing with expansion plans. They all have very strong belief in their local market. So, in summary, short-term challenges might exist, but over a period of time, infrastructure demand and government spending are all expected to sort of come back to normalized levels, and they all have a very strong belief in the market long-term as well.
Speaking of one more concern, how is the letters of credit thing in Bangladesh now? Is it still a concern for you being a seller?
It's not much of a concern. I think it was last, September, October in 25. Those were in 24. Those were more challenging times when the political upheaval was there. But today, barring a few customers, almost all of the sellers and buyers have understood that there has to be a more lead time to do business with Bangladesh. But opening of letters of credit are no more of a challenge today from the large mills like we were seeing last year. It's more a thing of the past.
Mr. Mehta, this is the most recent development I am hearing that Pakistan is again facing LC issues and payment issues. So I think, do you feel that this could be an opportunity, especially for the Middle Eastern sellers, to rope in and scale up their sales in Pakistan amid the payment issues?
I don't think so. Payment issues are going on with Pakistan from last 2 years. In 3-4 occasions, they have, the payments were too much delayed and everything. But if you see the global market, the demands are not that much lucrative. So people don't have any option. And people are okay to supply some quantity to Pakistan, wait for some time, 2-3 months delay, 1 month delay. And that is they have adjusted in the system that few tonnage will move to Pakistan, more tonnage will move to India, few tonnage will move to the South Asia. So balancing trade, we as a foreign supplier, we need to balance the trade. And we can't ignore completely Pakistan. We have to move some quantity to Pakistan because the price difference is too much. We have price difference is almost $20-30. So you have a weakness that you can't ignore Pakistan. We have to adjust them in the system. It's okay. Things are moving. They have not failed in the commitments. Of course, there are payments issues, but they have not failed in commitments. That is what I have seen with my trade with the Pakistan.
Thank you, sir. Now connecting Southeast Asia to South Asia, Mr. Nathani, again to you. As a price reporter, we often saw Vietnamese deep sea prices heavily influencing Bangladesh bids, especially for bulk cargoes. But that correlation seems to be weakening lately. So now, how relevant are Vietnamese deep sea scrap prices for Bangladesh today?
Yeah, I think historically that's always been the case. Vietnam and Bangladesh have been competing for the same source material from either Japan or the US West Coast or from Australia or New Zealand. But I think you've covered in your slides and earlier as well, it's showing a lot of Chinese billets being exported into the Vietnamese market and other Southeast Asian markets over the last 6 months to a year. So I think that has put a huge shift change in dynamics on the amount of scrap Vietnam is actually requiring, because they've been getting a lot of billets and semis from markets like China. So the mills are not really using as much scrap. Bangladesh has seen this, of course, as a great opportunity. They've jumped in to buy the cargoes from Japan. And if you look at the overall numbers, the amount of Japanese scrap exported to Bangladesh in the last 6 months is the highest it's ever been. So I think today, where things stand, I don't really feel that Bangladesh is too impacted by Vietnamese price bids or Vietnamese price levels. They've definitely become a lot more independent in their pricing behavior. I think this is directly linked to the way Chinese billet exports are forecasted. If the billet exports into this region where we are right now reduce, you will see Vietnam buying a lot more scrap cargoes going forward. But if the Chinese billets continue along what's been forecasted by you as well, then I don't think the Vietnamese mills are, the prices they give or the quantities they're buying today are going to be impacting what Bangladesh is bidding, because they'll be having a lot more access to more supply of cargoes from Japan, Australia and New Zealand.
Right, and is that the reason why we are seeing a downtrend in imports of US West Coast cargoes in Vietnam too?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at macro numbers of all scrap imports into Vietnam, the numbers have dropped off in the last 1.5 year. And that's direct linkage to Chinese billets being exported into this region. So yeah, that's not a surprise, to be honest.
Mr. Mehta, Japan's leading steel makers have recently announced large-scale investment in EAF technologies as they have moved toward decarbonization. Do you see this leading to a sharp rise in domestic demand for premium grade scrap like Shindanchi? Additionally, how do you see lower grade scrap like H2 being impacted in this transition?
Regarding stainless steel, your question, I did not understand the question.
I am saying the leading steel maker in Japan has recently announced that they are going to invest largely into EAF's technology. So how do you see this impacting the export of premium grade scraps like Shindanchi and lower grade scrap like H2?
Busheling, we are not getting that much frequently so much cargo of busheling in India, as far as and India has a very good arising of busheling scrap, and all across India you will get busheling scrap. People are not too much paying any kind of premiums over shredded scrap or good quality of scrap for busheling scrap. So we have balancing market. India has a good quality of busheling scrap available. We were getting busheling scrap along with the shredded scrap and HMS cargo in mixed parcel only in India. And I haven't seen any single cargo. Might be sometime we might have got some single cargo of busheling scrap. But we are not so much fascinated, so much attracted towards busheling in imports market.
So perhaps in Bangladesh, because Bangladesh is a key buyer.
Yeah. They are not having that much availability. We have all car makers are generating so much busheling. Every Indian city has a good quality of busheling scrap availability. So we are not paying that much premium over any kind of shredded scrap. $5 or $7 might be fine, but it is not too much premium we are paying. And we have varieties of material available with the steel makers. So we are not very much fascinating in the imports. We are not giving so much preference to busheling on the prices side.
Just to add to what Mr. Mehta is saying also, yes, India doesn't need a lot of busheling because we have great domestic sources. But Shindachi as a grade is one of the most preferred raw materials for a lot of the Bangladesh mills. But I do see if EF capacity increases in Japan going forward domestic, then there will be pressure on Shindachi exports. There is a certain school of thought that says that Japan might actually not become a net exporter of scrap in the next 5-6 years. So there are arguments to be made for that as well, and rightly so. So yeah, Shindachi could actually being, I see the number of volume of Shindachi quantity reducing over a period of time as Japanese steel mills ramp up their own EAF technology and start using that more domestically.
Mr. Nathani, how about H2? The low grade, we have seen Indian mills are also preferring H2. I mean, like those who are importing for both India and Bangladesh. How do you see this impacting lower grade of H2?
I mean, look, in most supply markets, wherever in the world you are, the lower grades of scrap always find an export route out. So unless there's a specific requirement why Japanese mills might prefer H2, then I feel that supply source will always find its way out and find a buying market. You're seeing Indian mills actually prefer a lot of low grade HMS. We have HMS coming in from Central America, South America, various other countries, and shredded scrap doesn't come from any of those countries. So low grade HMS called H2 in Japan will always find its way out unless there's some specific need for it in Japan, which I don't see that in the short term, like I do with Shindachi. But with H2, I feel that it'll always get exported.
Right, Mr. Agarwal, there have been recent announcements that Japan and Vietnam have imposed anti-dumping duties on Chinese steel products. While these measures are targeted at finished steel, do you expect any spillover impact on the scrap market particularly?
Well, I'm not much aware about the Far East markets, but I think Sanjay Bhai or Dhaval will be able to answer this question better.
Prices have improved here a little bit. If you see the last couple of quarters, and we were getting not good prices in the Southeast Asia market, Far East market, compared with India and Pakistan and Bangladesh. So I think so prices have gone up in $10-20 here, and little demand will improve if we see in compare with the India and Bangladesh, Pakistan here. So market should be good. We are after duty has been imposed on the by Vietnam on the Chinese products.
One last question to Mr. Nathani, sticking to China. Do you expect China to return as a serious buyer of foreign scrap, or will the change be more symbolic than structural?
Difficult one. It's very hard to understand the Chinese play at times, but I personally don't see them importing too much scrap. If they do, it'll probably be high grades of PNS and other high grades, premium grades like busheling. I don't see the Chinese importing H2 and low grades of HMS and shredded, etc. But again, it's very difficult to understand the Chinese play and why they're suddenly allowing imports. But I personally don't see it happening and impacting the global markets in the short term.
Any questions from audience? The floor is open for questions from audience. Yes.
Nitin, please use the mic, Nitin.
Good morning, everyone. I have a question for Sanjay sir. Sir, you were talking that India does not have any such policy for green steel right now. Many countries, government are promoting usage of green steel. Government tenders are specifically talking about, buying green steel at some premium. So can MRI take a lead with the government and, maybe suggest if government starts buying the green steel at a premium, automatically others fall in place. So if government takes that lead, I'm definitely sure the other places, because this will give encouragement for further production of green steel in India.
We are in the process of, we are as a MRI, we are following with the government of India from the last 1 year, and government has issued green steel taxonomy also, and 3 categories have been bifurcated: a 5-star rating, a 4-star rating, 3-star rating, and government has identified from up to 1,600 kg per million per metric ton of the carbon emissions that falls under in green steel, up to 2.2 metric tons. So there is a taxonomy policy has already out. But yes, on pricing side, you are right. That pricing side, government is not that much promoting. But I'm sure the kind of talks MRI is going on with the government of India and the various ministries. In 1 year of time, maximum in 18 months of time, government has committed at least their procurement side, at least 50 to 60%, they will procure green steel. It will take time. By 2027, I think so, we will be out on the definitely starting paying premiums. So, the policy, regulations, everything, mindset, and everything should takes time. So, government is definitely keen to procure green steel, low carbon steel. It is taking time, but I'm damn sure that MRA is definitely talking to the government of India, and we will get it done. Sure. Thank you.
We'll take one last question from the audience since we already overtook the time for the next session.
Yeah, good morning. This is Rajesh Agarwal from RKG International, Bureau of Middle East Recycling. First of all, we talked about LME. What we find that yes, there is a scrap price in LME, but if you see the realistic way, the prices mentioned in the LME platform and the market prevailing prices, they are too much different. That is the basic reason LME ferrous scrap is not that popular like copper or zinc or aluminum. It is just for update. Right now we talked about the scrap requirement and we talked about the comparison between India, Pakistan and Bangladesh. I think, and my question to any one of you is, presently the whole dynamic has changed. Pakistan had import duty in the past. They have abolished the import duty. That is the reason now they have started importing all kind of scrap, including HMS or be it anything. Bangladesh has its own thing, but India being a great country and the concept of Atmanirbhar Bharat is there. So India is now more dependent on DRI and more availability of DRI, HBI, everything, whatever we talked. Don't you think that even in future, the scrap requirement in India will remain less as compared to the past, unless the green steel, some kind of law is imposed? So the requirement of scrap in India is going to be less and less in coming days due to domestic availability of other raw materials. Thank you.
Anyone?
Yeah, we've got two large steel mills on the dais, and Sanjay Bhai also, and they all use DRI, HBI. They can provide more detail, but I'm very clear that this is a price game and this is pure economics. If scrap were to drop for whatever reason to $300 or $310 today, every mill in India is going to be buying scrap, even though there's DRI and HBI available. That's my personal view. I don't know, let some of the other gents on this.
Yeah, it's pure pricing, and there are times when India is the only buyer in the market, we saw that last year in November or December, Pakistan wasn't buying, Bangladesh wasn't buying, it was only India. So I think it is a seasonal factor, a pricing factor, and I don't think demand of scrap is going to go down in India because the productions are increasing year on year. There we can see an 8 to 9% increase in production. So India is definitely going to require more scrap. And with regards to Pakistan, India is now in a position to buy a lot of cheaper or low-grade HMS because Indian mills have started processing scrap earlier, which was not there. So I think the grades of scrap have shifted. Pakistan wants more cleaner material, which has less carbon. Now with the sudden shift of our usage to sponge iron, we are okay with carbon also. There's a lot of cast which is coming, which we want to melt sponge iron.
Thank you. So now that brings us to the end of this session. A big thank you all to all the speakers for their time and insights, and to the audience for their attention and patience. We'll now move on to the next session on stainless steel and scrap. Thank you.